Well, Guzzo Theaters, Guzzo Cinemas, going to be screening a conspiracy theory film about the COVID-19 virus. The film has been fact-checked by journalists. They found upwards of 30 misleading or false claims. Claims include that face masks are ineffective, limiting transmission, that the COVID-19 virus was made in a French lab several years ago. And it is a screening. You want to see it? You can watch it at Cinema Guzzo. And let's find out why the film is being screened there. Let's go straight to the top. Vince Guzzo is the CEO of Cinema Guzzo. Hi, Vince. Welcome back to the show.
How are you, Elias?
I'm doing okay, but I got to be honest. You know, my gut says I'm disappointed.
Why are you disappointed for?
I'm disappointed that you're letting this film screen in your cinemas. I don't think it's, you know, it's clearly not beneficial to society when you allow a film that's going to increase distrust in science, distrust in government, distrust in medicine. I just think it's, you know, I don't think it's good for your brand either. Like on a personal level, I just don't think it makes much business sense at the end of the day for the, you know, for the ticket sales. So listen, tell me why you're saying, okay, this film can screen in my cinemas.
Well, because the truth of the matter, Elias, is that I'm not the one who should be censoring what's available or not available. And what I mean by that is, you know, the Quebec government has a, you know, quasi-governmental body called La Régie du Cinéma, which is under the Minister of Culture, and they're the ones who classify a movie, and they're the ones who authorize a movie being available to be screened by the general public. They're the ones, you know, and in all intents and purposes, the movie, you know, when it first started, the 4th of June, was classified general, the same way Cruella or many Walt Disneys are. So, you know, the truth of the matter is, short term, some people might be saying I'm not doing society a favor, and I would tell you, middle to long term, people will realize that if I had not played the movie, if I had taken a hard stance and said, no, I don't want to watch, you know, the movie to be seen because, or whatever my personal opinions may have been, the problem would have been that then the conspiracy theorists would have gone on a rampage saying, you see, that's the way it is. You see, because it's the truth, they're not showing it to us. The truth of the matter is, I showed the movie. I saw the movie, first of all, before seeing the movie, because if in any way the movie would have opened up the door to violence or to discrimination against a segment of the population or whatever, that I wouldn't have done. I wouldn't have shown that because I'm not interested in that. But then again, if that would have happened, the movie would have been either rated 18 plus or it would have basically been banned and the Quebec government would have taken a stance. Now, you have to remember, we have a government in power right now that is very pro-vaccine. So I've had a bunch of people.
Wait, there's another side. Wait, hold on a second. Very pro-vaccine. So there's another side to this. You're saying that we need to open up that debate. I don't understand.
No,
pro-vaccine.
No,
there's no two sides to that.
No, but Elias, if you let me finish, maybe you won't get as excited for no reason. So what I'm saying is, we have a government that's very pro-vaccine, and yet if they would have felt that this movie would have in any way helped or hurt, the vaccination attempts, I can guarantee you this government would have said, look, we don't want to hinder in any way, you know, the vaccine process. Therefore, we don't want this movie to be released right now. Release it in 6 months from now once we're done. But that's not what this government did. This government watched the movie like I did. And to be honest, when I watched the movie, I told myself I don't get it. Like many Michael Moore movies, I just don't get it. Like I sit there and I said, I'm not understanding what is the conclusion of it. Now, that's not to say that it's not a good movie or it's a movie, right? So, like many Michael Moore movies who were fact-checked, you'll realize that many of the facts were wrong. Mm-hmm. But it isn't for a movie theater operator to selectively choose what to play or not to play. I played The Last Temptation of Christ.
Here's the argument I'm making, Vince. We're with Vince Guzzo, CEO of Cinema Guzzo. You know, I know you're sort of saying, well, the ball should be passed towards the provincial government, but no government's going to get into the business or should get in the business of banning films, right?
But they did in Europe. They did in France. So I want you to realize that there is a historic with this movie in Europe. So the Quebec government could have, if it felt, or at the very least, right, alive, if it felt it was heinous propaganda, let's say, they could have labeled this movie 18 plus, like many movies that they've done in the past. So by them not labeling it 18 plus and actually going to the point of saying it's a general movie with no other conditions, to me, I think the people at the Régie du Cinéma did exactly what I did. They watched the movie and they said, I don't get it. Like
at the end of the day, though, Mr. Guzzo, this is your decision. And here's why, I start off saying I'm disappointed here. The last time you were on the show, the last topic we had on your last appearance here, we had to talk about the fact that Quebec Fier, which is a Facebook group and right-wing organization that peddles in misinformation, was using your words in their social media postings, and you were grabbing onto it. You were retweeting it, right? So the last time you're on, we're talking about you being just too adjacent, too close to conspiracy theory. Now you're back on again, too close, too adjacent to conspiracy theory, and I just don't think it's a good look. And listen, text lines are one thing, but I'm getting listeners here sending me notes that they're so disappointed.
But Elias, at the end of the day, if we are an open society, right? If Canada and Quebec are what they claim to be, which is not as close-minded as Americans, well, then maybe that's what we should do. Maybe what we should do is allow, right, for those people that you're calling conspiracy theories and whatever, let them express give them their 2 cents worth of attention. Let them embarrass themselves maybe with some awkward theories, right, where a magnet is going to stick to my skin where I got vaccinated or whatever. But I want you to realize that ultimately, right, as much as I gave attention to the conspiracies, I did give attention to getting vaccinated when I got myself vaccinated, and I did post it, and I did tag It's Our Shop Canada, and I promoted the fact that I got vaccinated.
You said
right?
you've said you have some limits, though, right? You've said you have limits. You said, well, if it promoted
violence,
I'll
tell you where I drew the limit. I drew the limit when you made the comment about Quebec Fier, and then they reposted something, or they posted something once again, putting my logo or putting their logo with my picture. We contacted them and we said, look, we would very much appreciate that you stop taking Mr. Guzzo's images and reposting them with your logo. And in fact, I reposted their post, but I covered their logo with my flower, which is the Mr. Sunshine flower, to say the words are my words, but they're not necessarily Quebec Solidaire. So there is a limit, right, to things. But as I said, I didn't.
Because let's say somebody wanted to air or comes up with a documentary that denies the Holocaust, and there's no violence in the. You said the limit for you is violence, but let's say someone wants to do a Holocaust denial documentary. You're going to air that? I certainly hope you'd say, I got standards there too, right? Doesn't matter if there's violence or not.
At the end of the day, this is where I think as a society, we need to make a choice. And this is the choice we need to make. If we want to push every fool underground, the underground will become a problem. Meaning what? Meaning if we don't want to one day become compound societies where a bunch of people live on farms with their guns like they do in the U.S., I think you got to give people their 2 cents worth, right? And that allows, you have to remember, that allows for people to actually say, on the flip side, the Jewish community.
They have that playground. They have that playground. Social media is their playground. So, they can already run amok on the internet as much as they want. Now they've got a voice in your theaters. And I just think for Mr. Sunshine, you're Mr. Sunshine. You're the Dragon's Den guy. It's disappointing.
But Elias, once again, I don't understand why you think they have a voice. In other words, you got to pay $12 to watch the movie. So unless you're willing to pay to watch this movie, it's not being given for free anywhere. It's not as if we're, inviting schools to come and watch this movie, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I've shown Michael Moore movies who've had blatant stupidities in there. I've shown anti-Christian movies or movies that have offended the Christian faith, and I'm Christian. And so at the end of the day, and I've gotten calls from Cardinals saying, as a member of the Order of Malta, you're not really going to show this movie. And I said, well, why not? Because if I don't show the movie, then it looks like I'm manipulating the message.
How many
And the
tickets
last
did this
thing I
film
want
sell?
is to manipulate the message. I want to be able to have the debate and tell the conspiracy theorists why their conspiracy doesn't make sense.
Worth it
just
for the ticket
doesn't.
sales? Was it worth it for the ticket sales? Has this thing sold tickets?
Look, it's not. I mean, is anything worth it these days? And in the theaters. I mean, when a movie like Cruella breaks its face, I mean, look, it's the number one. No, sorry, I shouldn't say that. It's the number 2 or number 3 movie in most of the francophone theaters. In the anglophone theaters, it is closer to the bottom of the pile. So clearly, the English have chosen not even to watch the movie. I've seen people go watch the movie, come out and tell me, there's nothing in there. I said, yeah, I agree. And that's why I showed it, because there's actually nothing in there that is hard evidence. Or, in other words, you have to ask yourself if sometimes by letting them have their piece and say that what they got to say, if they're not really embarrassing themselves and actually losing more faithfuls than if you shut them down. And then people who are not sure say, well, if they're shutting him down, it might be because he does have the truth. It's that double-edged sword. And as I've said before, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a big believer that there's been a lot more ignorance in the management of this pandemic versus that there isn't a pandemic, right?
Vince
that's
Guzzo
just a joke.
Is the CEO of Cinema Guzzo. Thank you for coming on and talking about the subject. I do appreciate it.
Thank you.